I want to bring my guest, an amazing investigative reporter for the Gray Zone. We had Liam Cosgrove. Thank you for making time. Thank you for joining us on RBN. Great to have you on.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I follow the Gray Zone, and I always love the work that you guys do. I especially love the work that you've been doing recently, calling out what I deemed and I call in an oxymoronic way the NATO left. We're gonna cover your call out of the AOC, but I was talking about the state of the Ukraine war. I want to get your general thoughts because the idea was we're gonna wage this economic war against Russia, that we're gonna win this war against Russia, and you have reports I am reading, I'm not making this up, that shows that Russia's economy is about to grow. You have Germany, you have the UK that's struggling. So what is your overall take on the Ukraine war and the West strategy thus
far? My overall take on the Ukraine war is that it's insane. The fact that we are risking nuclear war for, the Crimea and the Donbass, which you can look at U.S. government polling from back in the day. You can also look at kind of pro-Western Ukraine polling, and it shows that both of those regions want to secede from Ukraine. So from my perspective, we should just let them secede. I mean, that's kind of our policy on Taiwan, right? I mean, our official policy on Taiwan is the one China policy. But you hear politicians talk about how, we can never let China take Taiwan. So for some reason, we're for secession in that case, and we're against secession in the case of Crimea and the Donbass. And on your point of economic war, I would love it if our engagement, we already have some military engagement sort of, with like directing where they giving them intel for fighting their war and stuff, and reports of even some U.S. personnel there on the ground. So, but I hope this maintains our involvement on the economic front. I think, Russia seems to have been resilient. I don't know the details really on how the economy is actually doing. I think.
Yeah, I just take people's word for it. They say it's going to grow. I'm like, I don't know how that's possible, but it is.
It could grow nominally. I mean, this is like a thing that I've always hated that the U.S. talks about, a wartime economy. Like in high school, I was taught about a wartime economy. Like, oh yeah, the GDP actually went up because we were making all these ships. And sure, there's a nominal when you pivot the industrial base to make weapons, and then Raytheon puts a big price sticker on it. Okay, your nominal GDP just went up, but did the people of the country get wealthier? No, because the resources all went into weapons, which actually destroyed things, so everyone got poorer. So I think that's a bunch of BS. That could be what they're referring to. I don't know. But either way, Russia seems to be resilient in that, India's still buying natural gas and stuff like that from them, and so is China. So I also subscribe to the slogan that when goods should cross borders, because when goods don't cross borders, soldiers do. I think trade is good. I think our sanctions regime, the U.S. has become addicted to sanctions over the last couple of decades, and it's not.
Isn't it like 2/3 of the world's population is under sanctions, something like that? Something
I didn't
crazy.
Know, is that true? Yeah, I mean that's like when you.
Let me fact check myself. But I heard something crazy like that.
Yeah, I mean if that's true, that's wild, and it's sad to see. And
1/3.
Oh, okay, 1/3. I mean that's still insanely high, and it's way too high. And you think about initially that kind of stuff can work, when the first couple times you do it. But the more and more you do it, it's almost like kind of argument and debate. If you're, which is true of a lot of these people on the left and kind of the neocon rhino types, is they refuse to talk to who they view as fringe, and they're like, oh, I would never talk to that person. I don't want to, give any credence to what they're saying. It works the first couple of times, but the more you do that, you're just isolating yourself into a smaller audience. And the U.S. here is isolating itself into a smaller pool of people who are actually willing to trade with it. It can only hurt us in the long run. I mean, we benefit from getting cheap goods from China. It's actually a pretty good deal for us, and we should not be poking the bear that provides us with so many of our goods. I mean, it's insanity. The rhetoric that's going around China. And the same could be true of Russia. I mean, the idea that we trade oil with Saudi Arabia, but for some reason it's totally off limits for Russia.
Yeah.
It's as if Saudi Arabia has this great human rights track record, with what they're doing in Yemen.
Yeah.
It's it's so insane. And I mean, that's just what they say in public. So behind the scenes, they're thinking there's some, geopolitical strategic value for it. But that strategic value could still exist with Russia. There's no reason, we couldn't have allied with them and prevented this war in the first place. Allied with them when they offered
Absolutely.
to help fight ISIS and stuff like that, which is another thing. I mean, we helped create ISIS. So not that I'm pro however the U.S. government wants to fight ISIS. I just mean there are so many ways that we could ally with these countries. And I don't know. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes that drives these animosities. I think a lot of it's kind of Cold War relics, like guys like John McCain who never got past the Cold War and just hate Russia with an animosity, this irrational animosity. That could be where it comes from. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely deep-seated Russophobia. That's how they're able to trick, especially people who consider themselves to be like progressive liberals, into cheering for war. And what you said about trade is a great point, because when you have countries and regimes that do stuff that make me disgusted, right? Obviously, I'm still anti-war. So, what is the answer? Still in the military end? Absolutely not.
Of course.
Absolutely. So, and I want you, and if I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Because my thing is and it's not gonna happen because we ruled and dictated by psychopaths. But the best thing you can really do to influence a culture to respect human rights, respect the dignity of life, is to, for one, uphold those values yourself as a country. So you got to clean up your own domestic policy and lead by example. But by opening trade and open relationships, having the free movement of people between countries, normalizing each other's cultures, I think you can have influence on otherwise cultures that may be off on human rights. I think that's the answer, instead of relying on might makes right imperialism that only have the opposite effect, like the war on terror and increasing terrorism. Just for a second, Tom, I want to show you guys this. I want to show you. You have anything you want to add real quick?
I couldn't have said that any better. That's totally spot on. I think about that all the time. If you really want to make China less authoritarian, keep trading with them, keep sending your diplomats over there, have the conversation. And then you also have to lead by example, because or else your statements are just hollow. That was very well said. I mean, dialogue is how you change. We're not going to go to war with China, another nuclear power. So the only option that we could have left, I mean, a war would be devastating to everyone. So the only other option is dialogue. It's it's persuasion, which is through, voluntary exchange of goods.
And the reason why the American people are turning against the Ukraine war, there was like a -30 drop compared to last February, which is devastating, especially considering the propaganda, is that we see that Maui victims are only getting $700 per household, as the United States government is paying for the salary of Ukrainian government officials. They literally subsidizing small businesses and paying for the healthcare of Ukrainian people. And they do this lockdown political theater every few months, every year or so. And they always say, well, there's going to be a government shutdown, and this is going to hurt so many poor people. Working class government employees are going to be hurt by this government shutdown. That's why we must install and implement austerity politics to prevent that from happening. So you guys see, as our government shutdown is looming, despite the fact that we are having a government shutdown, we're still going to be paying the salaries of 1,000 Ukrainians during this hypothetical government shutdown. So doesn't it show how corrupt this is? Liam, do you have any reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's wild. I literally, not even probably 30 minutes ago, I was just asking the Pentagon about this, and they kind of blew it off and said, we don't really deal with the humanitarian training, which I don't know if that's true or not. Hopefully we'll post that later on Grey Zone, and then maybe if someone knows that that's not the case, we can call them out for lying there. But it's crazy. Yeah, we're paying Ukrainian pensions. We're paying, as you mentioned, the small business loans. We're paying for seeds and fertilizers for their farmers amid a government shutdown. And it's just, we're going well beyond humanitarian aid. We're providing like SBA loans to, Ukrainian businesses. And it's the only reason they need all this help is because half their country is destroyed. And that could have been avoided had we, before the war even started, had we helped, facilitate referendums in Crimea and the Donbass, where, as I said, they want to secede. That was one of Putin's demands. That was one of Zelensky's campaign promises, was holding those referendums. We could have prevented this whole thing from happening, and we wouldn't need to be funneling a bunch of money over there. And I think the problem is, a lot of people lot of organizations are enriching themselves from these donations. They're skimming a little off the top. They're overcharging for the weapons and whatever. So it's really messed up. I mean, so they kind of blew me off at Pentagon, but that's a really good, the way you phrased it there is very good. Like, why are we still paying when our government's shutting down and when we're barely giving any money to people in Hawaii? I might try that one on some congressional representatives.